The wind howled across the cemetery like a distant engine revving in the night, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked earth and faded wildflowers. Samuel Rebar Costa pulled his weathered Harley to a stop at the wrought-iron gates, the kickstand scraping against gravel with a metallic groan. It was just past dusk. The sky bruised purple over the rolling hills of this forgotten corner of the Midwest, where headstones stood like silent sentinels under a canopy of ancient oaks. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the ache in his chest, a familiar hollow that had settled there 5 years ago when the ground had claimed what little light remained in his world. Rebar swung his leg over the bike, his leather jacket creaking as he straightened up. At 48, he was a mountain of a man, broad-shouldered and scarred from decades on the road with the Iron Vow crew, tattoos of coiled chains and broken oaths snaking up his arms like promises etched in ink. His face, weathered by sun and sorrow, bore the lines of a life spent chasing horizons to outrun ghosts. He carried a single white lily in his gloved hand, its petals trembling in the gusts. Every year on this date, he came here alone. No crew, no fanfare, just him and the stone that marked the end of his daughter's laughter. The path wound through the graves, crunching under his boots, each step echoing the rhythm of a heartbeat he wished he could silence. He paused at a weathered marker halfway down the row, reading the inscription by the dim glow of a distant street lamp. Lila Costa, beloved daughter, 2005-2018. She danced in the rain. The words blurred as he knelt, placing the lily at the base. His fingers lingered on the cold granite, tracing the carved letters. Lila had been 12 when the accident took her, a rainy night on a back road, her small hand slipping from his as he reached for a fallen toy. The guilt was a chain around his neck, heavier than any engine he'd ever rebuilt. But tonight, something shattered the solitude. A soft, broken sob drifted on the wind, pulling Rebar's gaze to the shadows beyond Lila's stone. There, huddled against a nearby plot, was a girl, no more than 10 or 11, curled into herself like a wounded animal. Her dark hair whipped across her face, matted with tears and dirt, and she clutched her knees to her chest, rocking slightly. Thin arms poked from a threadbare sweater, and even in the fading light, Rebar noticed the awkward angle of her left hand, fingers twisted in a way that spoke of old injury, not accident. She was crying not just with sadness, but with a raw, terrified isolation that clawed at the air. He froze, instincts from years of riding with brothers who watched each other's backs kicking in. Cemeteries weren't places for kids, especially not alone at this hour. The wind carried her whisper then, fragmented and desperate. "Why'd you have to go? You were the only one. The only one who didn't look at me like that." Rebar's heart twisted. He'd seen that look before, in mirrors, after Lila's funeral, when pity or revulsion shadowed the eyes of old friends. He stepped closer, boots deliberate but soft, not wanting to startle her. "Hey, kid," he said, voice low and gravelly, like the rumble of his bike idling. "You okay? This ain't no place for a little one at night." She flinched, head snapping up, eyes wide and red-rimmed under the brim of a faded baseball cap. Her face was streaked with mud, but there was a fierce spark in those brown eyes, undimmed by fear. "Go away," she hissed, but her voice cracked, betraying the plea beneath. "I don't need your help. Nobody does. Not with this." She held up her deformed hand, the fingers curled inward like wilted petals, then yanked it back, hugging it close. Rebar didn't move, respecting the space but not backing off. He crouched to her level, the chills seeping through his jeans. "Name's Samuel, but folks call me Rebar. What's yours?" She eyed him warily, the wind tugging at her cap. Seconds stretched like taffy, the only sound her ragged breaths. Finally she muttered, "Iris, Iris Moreno." The name hung there, ordinary yet weighted, like a key to a lock he didn't yet see. Iris wiped her nose on her sleeve, glancing at the grave she leaned against. A simple stone for Elena Vasquez, 1990-2023, kindred spirit. Fresh dirt outlined the edges, the plot still raw from recent burial. She was my friend, my only real one. Elena didn't care about this. Iris flexed her hand again, the joints popping faintly. Kids at school call me freak. Teachers look away. But Elena, she said it was just part of me, like her tattoos were part of her. She promised we'd always stick together, said she'd teach me to ride a bike someday, even with this. Rebar's throat tightened. Promises. The word was a blade, slicing through the armor he'd built around his grief. Elena Vasquez, the name tugged at a memory, fuzzy from crew gossip. A nurse who'd patched up more than one iron vow rider after bar fights or road spills, always with a quiet smile and no questions. She'd vanished weeks ago, whispers in the wind about a sudden leave from the hospital, no forwarding trace. And now this grave. Iris's sob broke free again, muffled against her knees. She disappeared first, said she had to go somewhere safe, but she'd come back. Then, this. She jabbed a finger at the stone. They found her in a ditch off the old highway. No note, nothing, and now I'm alone again. Rebar scanned the area, his biker's eye catching details others might miss. A single daisy, wilted but deliberate, tucked into the grave's edge, not the lilies the groundskeeper used. Beside Iris's foot, half buried in the grass, a crumpled note fluttered, ink smudged but legible. Iris, trust no one but the vow. Find Rebar if I'm gone. E. His name, scrawled in a hand he vaguely recognized from Elena's charts during a crew medic run. The pieces clicked like gears in an old transmission. Elena had known him, reached out through this child in her final moments. Rebar's hand went to the iron vow patch on his vest, a coiled serpent around an unbreakable link. Loyalty. That's what the club stood for, forged in the fires of lost brothers and unspoken oaths. He'd walked away from the crew after Lila, burying himself in solo rides to numb the pain. But here, in the chill wind, with Iris's eyes pleading silently, that old fire stirred. "Listen, Iris," he said, voice steady as he extended a gloved hand, not to grab but to offer. Elena was one of the good ones, saved my hide more than once. If she trusted me with this, then you can too. We find out what happened, not for payback, for her, for the promise she made to you. Iris hesitated, the wind dying to a whisper as she searched his face. The cemetery lights flickered on, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts. Slowly she nodded, placing her small, twisted hand in his. It was warm, fragile, but gripped with a surprising strength. In that touch, Rebar felt the weight of two broken souls aligning, not by blood, but by the quiet honor of keeping a word given in the dark. As they stood, the first stars pricked the sky, and Rebar knew this ride would change everything. The road ahead wasn't just asphalt, it was a path to dignity, to honoring the lost. He led her toward his Harley, the engine waiting like a faithful steed, ready to roar into the unknown. If you're watching this and feeling that pull, the call of unspoken promises, hit that subscribe button now. These stories of quiet courage need voices like yours to carry them further. Let's ride together. The Harley's engine growled to life under Rebar's hands, a deep, throaty vibration that cut through the cemetery's hush like a promise breaking free. Iris perched behind him on the worn leather seat, her small frame rigid at first, arms tentatively circling his waist, as if testing the strength of a stranger's word. The wind rushed in as they pulled away from the gates, headstones blurring into grey sentinels fading in the rear view. Streetlights strung along the rural road cast fleeting halos, turning the asphalt into a ribbon of silver under the emerging moon. Rebar kept the speed steady, Not the reckless tear he'd once chased to drown out memories, but a measured roll that let the night air carry away the chill of the gravesite. Iris's grip tightened on the first curve, her breath hot against his jacket. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice barely audible over the wind's whistle. It was the first full sentence she'd strung together since the stones. Laced with that mix of defiance and vulnerability Rebar knew too well from his own shadowed days. "Somewhere safe," he replied, eyes fixed on the horizon where the road dipped into shadowed valleys. "Old warehouse on the edge of town. Used to be a meat spot for my crew before. Things changed." He didn't elaborate. The Iron Vow had been his anchor once, a brotherhood forged in the grit of long hauls and harder falls. But after Lila, he'd cut ties, riding solo like a ghost haunting his own life. Elena's note had cracked that isolation, pulling him back toward the chain that bound them all. The town lights flickered into view after 20 minutes. A sleepy cluster of neon signs and shuttered storefronts huddled against the prairie. Rebar eased off the throttle as they approached a chain-link fence overgrown with rust and wild ivy, the warehouse looming like a forgotten relic from better industrial days. Floodlights buzzed faintly from a single pole, illuminating the faded mural on the brick wall. A serpent coiling around an iron link, the club's emblem staring back with unblinking eyes. He killed the engine, the silence settling heavy, broken only by the distant hum of crickets and Iris's soft exhale. She slid off the bike, boots scuffing the gravel lot, her twisted hand clutching the edge of her sweater. "This place looks creepy, like where bad things hide." Her eyes darted to the shadows pooling around stacked crates and oil drums, the air thick with the metallic tang of old machinery and lingering diesel. Rebar nodded, swinging his leg over and securing the Harley with a practiced kick. "It has its ghosts, but it's got walls and locks, better than the open road tonight." He led her to a side door, rapping a coded pattern, 3 quick, 2 slow, against the scarred metal. It creaked open almost immediately, revealing Jax Link Harlan in the threshold, a wiry veteran of the Vow with a salt-and-pepper beard and eyes sharp as switchblades. Jax had been Rebar's road brother since their army days, the one who'd pulled him from the wreck that scarred his left forearm with jagged lines like lightning. "Rebar? Hell, man, it's been months. Thought you'd vanished for good." Jax's gaze shifted to Iris, softening just a fraction. "And who's the shadow?" "Long story," Rebar grunted, stepping inside with Iris close behind. The interior was a cavern of echoes, high ceilings strung with bare bulbs, casting warm pools over workbenches, cluttered with tools and half-rebuilt engines. The air smelled of grease and coffee. A faint undercurrent of leather from the club jackets hung on pegs. A few other Vow members lounged in the corner. Tank, the burly mechanic nursing a beer, and Mira, a sharp-eyed former dispatcher with tattoos mirroring the club's Vow, nodding greetings without pressing. Iris hovered near Rebar, scanning the space warily, but curiosity won out as she spotted a wall of Polaroids. Riders grinning mid-ride, sunsets bleeding into highways, moments frozen in ink and emulsion. Rebar guided her to a scarred wooden table, pulling out a chair. "Sit. Jax, get her some water, and coffee for me. Black." As Jax moved to the makeshift kitchenette, Rebar sat across from Iris, peeling off his gloves to reveal calloused hands marked by years of wrenching metal. "Tell me more about Elena. Everything you remember." The note said, "Trust the Vow." She knew us, patched us up at the clinic after runs gone south, but disappearing. That's not her style. Iris fiddled with her cap, twisting it in her good hand, the words tumbling out in fits. She worked nights at the hospital, said it was quiet there, away from the noise. But last month, she started acting funny, jumpy, like someone was watching. One day, she picked me up from school early. We went to the park and she gave me this. She dug into her pocket, pulling out a small, tarnished locket on a chain, heart-shaped and etched with faint vines. Inside there's a picture of her and some guys on bikes. She said if anything happened, find the man who looks like a mountain with sad eyes. That's you, right? Rebar took the locket, thumbing it open. The photo showed Elena, mid-laugh, arms slung around a group of vow riders, including him, younger, before the lines of loss etched his face. A pang hit him, sharp as a loose chain whipping back. Elena had been more than a medic. She'd been a quiet ally, stitching wounds without judgment, listening to confessions spilled over midnight shifts. Yeah, that's me. What else? Any names? Places? She mentioned a doctor, Dr. Hale, at the hospital, said he was pushing her to sign something, papers about restructuring care. Sounded shady. And there was a van, black, always parked outside her apartment. License started with MV something. Iris's voice gained strength, the fear edging into resolve. She promised she'd fix things for kids like me. No more looks, no more hiding. Then she was gone. Jax returned with a steaming mug and a glass, sliding them across the table before leaning in, arms crossed. "Hale, ring a bell, boss?" He glanced at Rebar, the old title slipping out like habit. Rebar sipped the coffee, bitter heat grounding him. Vaguely. Elena griped about admin once, said the higher-ups were cutting corners on patient care to line pockets. If she pushed back... He trailed off, mind racing through connections. The vow had steered clear of town politics, but whispers of corruption in local services had circulated, hospitals squeezing the vulnerable, authorities turning blind eyes. Elena's grave suggested more than an accident. Signs of struggle the crew had heard through back channels, though details were buried under official silence. Tank lumbered over, wiping grease from his hands on a rag. "We can dig. Mira's got contacts at the station, off record of course. But Rebar, you sure? Walking back in means the whole chain pulls tight. Brothers don't ride half-assed." Rebar met Iris's gaze across the table. Her eyes held that same quiet plea from the cemetery. "Trust me to keep the promise." He thought of Lila's stone, the lily wilting under wind, and how Elena's final act had bridged their pains. "I'm in. For her. For the kid." He closed the locket, handing it back to Iris. "We'll start at the hospital tomorrow." Quiet. No storms yet. The group murmured assent, the warehouse filling with the low hum of plans taking shape, maps unrolled, phones buzzing with cautious calls. Iris watched it all, a small smile cracking her guarded shell as Mira draped a spare jacket over her shoulders, the leather too big but warm like an embrace. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the corrugated roof like distant thunder, signaling the storm of truths yet to break. As the night deepened, Rebar stepped out for air, leaning against the Harley under the floodlight's glare. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent witnesses to oaths renewed. This wasn't just a ride. It was redemption uncoiling, one link at a time, pulling him from the grave's shadow toward a horizon where dignity waited. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The morning sun clawed its way over the warehouse roof, painting the gravel lot in harsh gold that chased away the night's shadows. Rebar's Harley stood sentinel, dew beading on its chrome like unshed tears, the engine still warm from the idle runs he'd taken to clear his head. Inside, the air hung thick with the aroma of fresh-brewed coffee and sizzling bacon, Mira's doing, her way of turning the makeshift kitchen into a hearth for the weary. Iris sat at the table, dwarfed by the oversized jacket, picking at a plate of eggs with her good hand, the twisted one tucked safely in her lap. Her eyes, still puffy from fitful sleep on a cot, darted between the vow members as they geared up, leather creaking and boots thudding like a ritual drumbeat. Rebar watched her from the workbench, polishing a chain-link pendant that had once hung from his rear view, a talisman of oaths unbroken. Sleep had evaded him too, his mind replaying Elena's locket photo, the way her smile cut through the club's rough edges. "You ready for this, kid?" he asked, voice a low rumble that blended with the sizzle of the pan. Iris nodded, swallowing a bite. "As long as we find out what happened. She promised me answers, even if she's gone." The word caught, but she pushed it down, her small jaw setting with that fierce resolve Rebar admired. It mirrored his own, the kind forged in loss, not given by birth. Jax clapped a hand on Rebar's shoulder as he passed, keys jingling. "Mira and Tank'll tail us in the truck. I'll ride shotgun on your wing. Hospital's a snake pit. Keep it cool. No revving engines till we're clear." The plan was simple. Pose as concerned family, checking on Elena's records, lean on old contacts without raising flags. The vow's code was clear. Truth over force, loyalty over chaos. They rolled out at 8 sharp, the convoy cutting through town like a shadow on the wind. Rebar led, Iris clutching the back of his vest, her cap pulled low against the rush. The streets unfolded in a blur of picket fences and faded billboards, the air crisp with the scent of autumn leaves crunching under tires. The hospital rose on the outskirts, a squat fortress of white brick and glass, its parking lot a sea of sedans under the relentless sun. Rebar eased into a spot near the emergency entrance, the Harley's growl fading to a purr before silence swallowed it whole. Inside, the lobby buzzed with muted urgency, beeps from distant monitors, the sharp tang of antiseptic cutting through the stale coffee from a vending machine. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a clinical pallor on tiled floors worn smooth by countless footsteps. Iris stuck close to Rebar's side, her hand brushing his as they approached the reception desk, where a nurse with wire-rimmed glasses typed away, her badge glinting, "Welcome Center, Clara." "Mornin'," Rebar said, leaning on the counter with easy confidence, his bulk softened by a nod. "We're here about Elena Vasquez, family friend. Need to pick up some of her things, papers she left behind." Clara's eyes flicked up, scanning them with practiced neutrality. "Vasquez? Let me check." Her fingers danced over the keyboard, the clack echoing like distant gunfire. Iris shifted, peering at the walls lined with posters of smiling patients, their perfection a stark contrast to her own hidden scars. Rebar felt her tension, a subtle tremor, and placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, light, reassuring, like anchoring a bike in crosswinds. "Here we are," Clara murmured, brow furrowing. "Elena was with us until 3 weeks ago. Sudden resignation, no forwarding address. Admin might have her file." She buzzed them through a side door, the lock clicking open with a mechanical sigh. The admin offices were a warren of cubicles, air thick with printer ink and whispered phone calls. Dr. Hale's door loomed at the end, frosted glass etched with his name in bold letters. Rebar knocked once, firm, and pushed in without waiting for the full invite. The room smelled of polished oak and faint cologne, shelves lined with plaques and files stacked like accusations. Hale sat behind a desk, mid-40s, slick hair and a tie too tight for the heat, his smile thin as a scalpel. "Can I help you?" Hale's voice was smooth, but his eyes narrowed on Iris, lingering a beat too long on her hand before snapping back. Rebar didn't sit, towering instead. "Samuel Costa, Elena Vasquez worked under you. We're tying up loose ends, her belongings, any notes she left." Iris hung back by the door, but her gaze was steady, absorbing every flicker. Hale leaned back, fingers steepled. "Tragic loss. Elena was dedicated, but privacy laws, you understand." He slid a folder across the desk, thin and unremarkable. This is what we have. Resignation letter, standard, no personal effects. Rebar opened it, scanning the typed page. Eleanor's signature looped at the bottom, but the date off by a day from what Iris remembered. Something gnawed at him, a loose thread. She mentioned concerns about care restructuring, pushing papers on patients. Hale's smile tightened. Routine admin. Elena was passionate, perhaps overly so. If your family, I'd suggest the records department. His glance toward the door was pointed, but Rebar caught the subtle shift. A photo on the desk. Elena mid-conversation with Hale, her expression guarded. Iris stepped forward then, voice small but clear. She said you wanted her to sign off on treatments that weren't right, for kids like me. The words hung, raw and unfiltered, the room's hum fading to a tense hush. Hale's face paled, just a fraction, before he recovered. Young lady, that's not... This is a misunderstanding. Elena left voluntarily. But his hand drifted to a drawer, casual yet telling. Rebar's instincts flared. The old road sense prickling like gravel under tires. We'll take that file, and a word with anyone who saw her last. No threat, just the weight of truth pressing in. As Hale buzzed for security, subtle, under the desk, Jax's voice crackled in Rebar's earpiece, hidden under his collar. Trouble brewing outside. Black van, same plates Iris described. MV something. Pulling up now. The door swung open to two guards, but Tank's truck blocked the lot, Mira already sweet-talking a parking attendant. Rebar scooped the folder under his arm, guiding Iris out with a firm hand. Time to ride. They burst into the sunlight, the Harley's engine roaring to life as the van's doors slid open, shadows shifting inside. No pursuit yet, but the air crackled with unspoken pursuit. Iris clung tight as they peeled out, the wind whipping her cap free, dark hair streaming like a banner of defiance. Behind them, the hospital shrank in the mirror, a facade cracking under the weight of hidden vows. Back at the warehouse by noon, the crew gathered around the table. The folder splayed open like a map to buried secrets. Rebar traced the discrepancies, the forged date, a scribbled note in the margin, Hale's cuts, exposing the vulnerable for profit. Elena's hand unmistakable. Iris pointed to a name in the contacts, a fellow nurse, Sophia, who'd whispered warnings. We hit her next, Rebar said, the fire in his chest steady now, fueled by Iris's quiet nod. The vow links tightened, pulling them toward justice, not with fists, but with the unyielding honor of promises kept. Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows that promised storms ahead, but for the first time in years, Rebar felt the road calling not to escape, but to reclaim. Jax unrolled a town map, markers dotting potential trails, the van's haunts, Sophia's shift. Mira brewed more coffee, the steam rising like resolve. Iris, jacket still draped over her, sketched a rough drawing of the van from memory, her twisted hand steadying against the paper. In that shared silence, broken only by the scratch of pen and murmur of plans, Rebar saw the family forming, not of blood, but of chosen steel, bending but never breaking. As afternoon bled into evening, the first call came through, Mira's contact at the station confirming the van's registration to a shell company tied to hospital suppliers. Corruption's web, spun in boardrooms, now ensnaring the innocent. Rebar's mind raced to Lila, to Elena's grave, to the girl beside him whose dignity hung in the balance. This ride was weaving their pains into purpose, one revelation at a time. The warehouse lights buzzed like hesitant fireflies as evening settled in, casting elongated shadows across the scarred table where the crew huddled. Rebar's fingers drummed a slow rhythm on the folder's edge, the paper crinkling under his calluses, while the scent of cooling coffee mingled with the faint acrid bite of marker ink from Iris's sketch. The black van's outline stared up at them, blocky, menacing, its details etched with the precision of a child's unyielding memory. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the loose panes like impatient knuckles, whispering of the gathering dusk over the prairie. Iris sat cross-legged on a stool, her twisted hand resting on the map Jax had pinned down with engine parts. Her eyes, sharp and unblinking, traced the routes Mira had highlighted in red. Sophia's apartment on the east side, a back alley near the hospital's loading dock, where the van had been sighted twice. "She works nights," Iris said, voice steady now, laced with the quiet authority of someone who'd learned to navigate silence. Eleanor said Sophia was scared too, saw things she shouldn't. "If we go now, before her shift, maybe she'll talk." Rebar nodded, the weight of the locket still heavy in his pocket, a talisman bridging Elena's final trust to this makeshift family. He'd promised Iris answers, not vengeance, but the fire in his gut burned hotter with each thread they pulled. The vow had always been about holding the line, protecting the overlooked, the scarred, those the world deemed broken. Lila's memory flickered in his mind, her laughter a ghost, urging him forward, reminding him that some chains couldn't be cut without facing the rust. "All right," Rebar rumbled, pushing back from the table. His chair scraped against the concrete, echoing like a decision finalized. "Jax, you and Tank take the truck. Scout the alley first. See if that van's lurking. Mira, stay here with Iris. Line up a safe house if things go south. I'll ride solo to Sophia's. Keep it personal. No full crew rolling up like thunder." Mira arched a brow, her tattooed arms crossing over her chest. "You sure? Last time you went lone wolf, it took us a week to drag you back." Her tone was light, but her eyes held the old worry, the kind forged in shared battles and lost rides. Rebar met her gaze, the corner of his mouth twitching in a rare half-smile. "This one's got a kid's dignity on the line. Can't thunder through that." He glanced at Iris, who clutched the sketch like a shield. "You good holding the fort?" She nodded, a spark of pride lighting her features. Just bring her back in one piece. Elena wouldn't want half measures. The words carried Elena's echo, a promise passed like a baton in the dark. The Harley thrummed to life under the floodlights, its roar a low growl that vibrated through Rebar's bones as he pulled onto the road. The town blurred past in streaks of sodium glow and shadowed lawns, the air cooling to a crisp bite that nipped at his exposed neck. Sophia's building was a modest stack of bricks on Elm Street, its windows flickering with the blue haze of televisions, ordinary lives unfolding behind curtains. He parked in the lot, the engines fade, leaving only the distant hum of traffic and the rustle of leaves skittering across pavement. Apartment 2B was up a flight of exterior stairs, the metal groaning under his boots. Rebar paused at the door, knocking softly. 3 raps, deliberate, not aggressive. Footsteps shuffled inside, hesitant before the chain rattled and the door cracked open. Sophia Ramirez peered out, mid-30s, her nurse's scrubs rumpled from a long shift, dark circles under eyes that widened in recognition. "Samuel? From the vow? Elena mentioned you, said you were solid." Her voice was a whisper edged with the strain of secrets carried too long. She glanced over his shoulder, scanning the lot before unfastening the chain and waving him in. The apartment was cramped, lit by a single lamp that pooled warm light over a sagging couch and stacks of medical journals. The air smelled of chamomile tea and faint lavender from a diffuser, a fragile sanctuary against the world's grind. Sophia sank into an armchair, gesturing to the couch. "Sit, but make it quick. Shift starts soon." Rebar lowered his bulk onto the cushions, which sighed under him. "Elena, what happened? We found her grave, a note pointing to me. And Iris, the kid she looked out for, says you two talked about Hale." Sophia's hands twisted in her lap, knuckles whitening. Elena was digging. Hale's been pushing efficiency protocols, cutting therapies for patients like Iris. The ones with conditions that don't pay off in quick recoveries, redirecting funds to private donors, experimental stuff, off books. She confronted him, refused to sign off, said it was about dignity, not dollars. Her eyes darted to the window, where headlights swept past like searching eyes. Then the threats started. Anonymous calls, that black van tailing her. She told me she was going to the board, but she vanished. Found her off the highway, signs of a struggle, but the report called it an accident. Hale pulled strings, quietly. Rebar leaned forward, the floorboards creaking. Papers? Proof? Sophia hesitated, then rose, crossing to a bookshelf. She pulled a thumb drive from behind a row of books, small and innocuous. Copies of emails, ledgers. Elena hid them with me before she left, but if Hale finds out... She trailed off, the fear raw, mirroring irises from the cemetery. Hand it over, Rebar said, voice even, extending his hand. We'll bury the corruption, not you. Elena trusted the vow, trusted me. This honors that. She placed the drive in his palm, her grip lingering. For the kids, tell Iris. Elena never saw her as broken, just strong in ways others couldn't handle. The exchange sealed like a pact, the weight of the drive pulling at Rebar's pocket as he stood. Watch your back. If that van shows, call Mira. Numbers on this. He slid a card across the table, etched with the serpent emblem. Sophia nodded, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that echoed in the stairwell. Back on the Harley, the engine's revival cut the night, tires biting asphalt as he raced toward the warehouse. The wind carried Sophia's words like fuel, stoking the resolve that had lain dormant since Lila's grave. This wasn't just exposure. It was redemption, uncoiling the chains of silence one truth at a time. He arrived to find the crew alert, Jax's truck idling outside with Tank at the wheel. Vans circled the alley twice, Jax reported, falling in step. They're sniffing. Inside, Iris jumped up as Rebar entered, her eyes questioning. He held up the drive, the plastic glinting under the bulbs. Got the keys to Hale's kingdom, emails, numbers, proof he's selling out the vulnerable for profit. Mira plugged it into a laptop, screens flickering to life with spreadsheets and chains of correspondence. Gasps rippled through the group as names emerged, donors tied to shady suppliers, treatment slashed for low-yield cases like Iris's. Elena's notes scrawled in margins, "This ends with dignity intact." Iris's face hardened, not with tears, but fire. "We take it to the board? Make them see." Rebar placed a hand on her shoulder, the touch steady as iron. "Tomorrow, clean official. But tonight we fortify. The vow rides together now." The warehouse filled with motion, phones charging, maps updated, the air humming with purpose. Outside, the wind howled fiercer, but inside, the links held firm, a chosen family forging justice from the ashes of broken promises. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Rebar stepped onto the lot, the drive safe in his vest. Stars pierced the clouds, witnesses to the path ahead. Confrontation, not chaos. Truth, not triumph by force. For Elena, for Iris, for the girl he'd lost. The ride pressed on, dignity's engine roaring silent but unyielding. If this story of quiet honor stirs something in you, drop a like below. It helps these tales of redemption reach more roads. Your support keeps the chain strong. The warehouse's corrugated roof groaned under the assault of a midnight squall, rain lashing against the metal like impatient fingers drumming on a forgotten drum. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of damp leather and the sharp tang of ozone seeping through cracks. The crew's low voices, weaving a tapestry of strategy under the harsh glow of desk lamps. Rebar stood at the workbench, the thumb drive clutched in his fist like a grenade pin half pulled, its cool surface a stark contrast to the heat rising in his chest. Iris hovered nearby, her small frame swallowed by the oversized jacket, eyes fixed on the laptop screen where Mira scrolled through the files, columns of numbers that painted a ledger of betrayal, treatments denied to the vulnerable in favor of shadowy prophets. Jax paced the concrete floor, boots echoing softly, his salt and pepper beard shadowed by the flickering light. "Board meetings at 9 tomorrow. We slip in quiet. Hand this over to the ethics committee lead. Old-timer named Harlan, no relation, but he's got a rep for sniffing out rot. No badges, no sirens, just facts and Elena's notes." He stopped, glancing at Rebar. "You lead the pitch. Your voice carries weight, always has." Rebar nodded, the motion pulling at the scar on his forearm, a reminder of rides gone wrong and brothers who'd pulled him through. The vows code pulsed in his veins. Honor the fallen, shield the overlooked, but doubt gnawed at the edges, a whisper of what-ifs from years of solo miles. What if Hale's web ran deeper, tangling cops or councilmen? What if exposing it dragged Iris deeper into the storm? He glanced at her, sketching absent-mindedly on a scrap of paper, a crude map of the hospital's corridors, her twisted hand guiding the pencil with deliberate strokes. "Kid, you don't have to come tomorrow. Mira can keep you clear." Iris looked up, her brown eyes fierce under the brim of her cap, now perched crookedly on her head. "I'm coming. Elena promised me a world without hiding. If this fixes that, I need to see it through." Her voice held no tremor, only the quiet steel Rebar recognized from his own reflections in rain-streaked mirrors. She flexed her hand, the joints popping faintly, not in shame but defiance, a badge of survival. Tank lumbered over from the corner, wiping his hands on a rag stained with grease, his massive frame casting a long shadow. "Van's been quiet since Sophia's, but I doubled the locks on the gates. If they come sniffing, we'll hear 'em." He ruffled Iris's hair gently, earning a small smile that lit the room like a headlight cutting fog. In these moments, the warehouse transformed, not a relic of rust, but a forge where broken pieces melded into something unbreakable. Sleep came in fits that night, the rain a relentless lullaby outside Rebar's cot, dreams tangled with memories. Leela's small hand in his on that fatal drive, Elena's steady gaze as she stitched a gash from a bar scuffle years back, her words soft over the hum of fluorescent lights. "Promises keep us riding straight, Samuel. Don't let the road bend you." He woke before dawn, the sky outside a bruised grey, and found Iris already up staring at the Polaroid wall. One photo caught her eye. Him and Elena, arms linked in a rare crew picnic, laughter frozen mid-breeze. "She saw you like family," Iris said without turning, her voice threading the quiet. "Not the big scary biker, just real." Rebar joined her, the floor cool under his socks. "She was that for a lot of us. Patched more than wounds, mended the parts that ache deeper." He touched the photo's edge, the paper yellowed at the corners. The drive in his pocket felt heavier now, a vessel for Elena's unfinished oath. By 7, the crew mobilized with the precision of a well-tuned engine. Mira packed the laptop into a nondescript case. Jax checked his sidearm, not for use but presence, while Tank loaded the truck with spares, water, snacks for Iris, a first aid kit echoing Elena's touch. Rebar fired up the Harley, the engine's rumble vibrating through the lot like a heartbeat quickening. Iris climbed on behind him, her grip sure around his waist, the rain-slicked roads gleaming under the rising sun. The convoy slipped into traffic, a subtle phalanx weaving through morning commuters, the hospital's white facade emerging like a monolith against the horizon. They parked in the visitors' lot, the truck blending with minivans, the Harley tucked discreetly. Inside, the lobby's bustle had a frantic edge, patients shuffling in slippers, phones ringing like alarms. Rebar led the way to the admin wing, Iris at his side, her steps measured but unyielding. The ethics office was a side room off the main hall, its door marked with a plain plaque. Harlan waited. A silver-haired man in a rumpled suit, his office smelling of stale files and weak tea. "You the vow folks?" Harlan asked, gesturing to chairs around a cluttered desk. His eyes, sharp behind bifocals, took in Rebar's bulk and Iris's quiet presence without judgment. Rebar slid the drive across the desk, Mira syncing it to the computer as Jax and Tank stood sentinel by the door. Elena Vasquez. Nurse here until she wasn't. This shows Hale's been gutting care for kids like Iris, slashing therapies to funnel cash to off-books donors. Emails, ledgers, her own warnings. She died trying to stop it. Harlan's face tightened as the screen filled with data, his fingers scrolling with growing intensity. Iris leaned forward, pointing to a line item. "That's my therapy. They cut it last year. Said it wasn't efficient." Her voice cut clear, the room's hum fading to her words. Harlan exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "This, if true, it's a breach that could topple the board. Elena came to me weeks ago, vague concerns. I pushed for an audit, but Hale stonewalled." He met Rebar's gaze, the weight of implication settling. "We'll convene an emergency session, but expect pushback. Hale's connected." As they filed out, the air in the corridor felt thicker, charged like the moments before a storm breaks. Rebar's phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from Mira's contact. "Van spotted 2 blocks east, moving your way." Instincts flared, the old road sense pulling him toward the exit, but before they reached the lobby, Hale appeared at the hall's end, flanked by 2 suits and a security guard, his face a mask of calculated calm. "Costa!" Hale called, voice smooth as oil on water. "A word? About that file you borrowed yesterday." Iris tensed beside Rebar, her hand brushing his. The crew closed ranks subtly, Jax's hand near his belt, but Rebar raised a palm. "Peace first. We're done borrowing, Doc. Ethics has the proof now. Eleanor's proof. Time to own it." Hale's smile didn't reach his eyes, lingering on Iris with that familiar flicker of disdain. "Misunderstandings. Let's discuss privately." But his glance toward the guard was a tell, the air crackling with unspoken threats. The lobby doors loomed ahead, sunlight streaming through glass like a promise of open road. Rebar guided Iris forward, the group moving as one, boots echoing in unison. Outside, the truck idled, Tank's engine a low growl ready to bolt. The van crept into view at the lot's edge, doors ajar, shadows shifting. But as Rebar fired the Harley, the roar drowned their advance, tires spinning gravel in a spray that bought seconds. They tore onto the highway, wind whipping rain from the morning into their faces, Iris's arms locked tight. In the mirror, the van gave chase, a black spectre hugging the curves. Jax's truck fell in behind, a rolling blockade. Rebar pushed the throttle, the engine's thunder a defiant cry, heart pounding with the rhythm of pursuit. This wasn't escape. It was the climax uncoiling, truth barreling toward collision, dignity's ride refusing to yield. Back at the warehouse by midday, sirens wailed distant, Harlan's audit rippling through channels. The crew barricaded, the drive copied and sent to safe allies. Iris sat with Rebar on the steps, watching clouds part, her voice soft against the wind. "We did it. For her." "Not yet," Rebar replied, the chain pendant glinting in his hand, "but the promise holds." The road ahead twisted with repercussions, but in that shared breath, redemption inched closer, one loyal link at a time. The warehouse lot shimmered under the midday sun, puddles from the morning rain reflecting fractured skies like shattered mirrors on the gravel. Rebar leaned against the corrugated wall, the rough metal biting into his back through the leather vest, while Iris sat on the step beside him, her twisted hand tracing idle patterns in a drying puddle. The distant wail of sirens had faded to a murmur, swallowed by the prairie wind that carried the faint, earthy scent of wet soil and wild grass bending in the breeze. Inside, The crew moved with quiet efficiency. Jax bolting the side door, Mira syncing backups of the drive's files to encrypted clouds, Tank's heavy footsteps thudding as he reinforced the chain link with spare cable. The air hummed with tension, not panic, but the coiled readiness of an engine idling before a long haul. Iris broke the silence first, her voice a thread weaving through the hush. "That van! They won't stop, will they? Even with the board knowing?" She didn't look at him, eyes fixed on the horizon where the highway ribboned into haze. But her small frame vibrated with the echo of the chase, the wind's roar in her ears, the Harley's thunder vibrating through her bones like a living promise. Rebar shifted, the chain pendant cool against his chest, a weight that grounded him amid the swirl. They'll try. Men like Hale don't fold easy when their house of cards tips. But we've lit the fuse. Harlan's audit will pull threads till the whole web unravels. Elena's truth does that. It sticks like oil on a clean chain. He thought of her note in the cemetery, the scrawled trust that had bridged his solitude to this girl's fire. 5 years of riding alone, chasing ghosts of Lila's laughter on empty roads, and now this, a chosen path, forged not in blood, but in the quiet honor of standing for the overlooked. She nodded, flexing her hand, the joints whispering a soft pop that blended with the wind's sigh. She always said you vow guys were different, not the monsters from stories, real keepers of words. A faint smile tugged at her lips, fragile as the first crack in frost, and Rebar felt a warmth stir in the hollow where grief had camped too long. Iris wasn't his by birth, but in these shared breaths she echoed Lila's spark, the unyielding light that no scar could dim. The side door creaked open, Jax emerging with a thermos of coffee, steam curling like smoke signals into the air. Harlan called back, emergency sessions locked for 4, boards scrambling, but Hale's lawyered up. We ride in as witnesses, not warriors. Iris, your word on the cuts. That'll hit home. He handed Rebar a mug, the bitter aroma cutting through the damp, and crouched to Iris's level. "You still game, kid? No shame in sitting this out." Her eyes flashed, that fierce spark undimmed. "I'm the reason Elena fought. I tell it." Jax ruffled her cap lightly, standing with a grunt that spoke of old wounds and older loyalties. The vow had pulled him from the brink after his own losses, a brother lost to desert sands, a marriage crumbled under the road's pull, and now here they were, links tightening around new shadows. As afternoon stretched, the crew prepped with ritual care, Mira packing the laptop into a reinforced case, its screensaver flickering the club's emblem like a silent oath. Tank tuned the truck's engine, the low rumble vibrating the lot like a heartbeat sinking. Rebar walked Iris through the plan, his voice steady as he mapped the hospital's back entrance on a napkin. Avoid the lobby's eyes, slip into the boardroom via service halls. We speak clean, truth's our throttle, no need for speed. By 3, they rolled out again, the convoy a subtle shadow under the climbing sun. The Harley led, Iris's arms secure around Rebar's waist, her breath even against the wind that tugged at their clothes like eager hands. Town unfolded in golden light, storefronts casting long shadows that danced across the asphalt. The air thick with the scent of baking bread from a corner bakery and distant rain lingering on the breeze. The hospital loomed once more, its glass facade gleaming like a false promise. But this time, resolve armored them against its chill. They parked in the rear lot, the truck blending with delivery vans, and entered through a side door marked "Staff Only." The corridors smelled of polished linoleum and faint bleach, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like hesitant witnesses. Harlan met them in an antechamber, his suit more pressed now, eyes grave behind bifocals. "They're inside. Hale, the chair, a dozen suits. Your files opened eyes. Keep it factual." The boardroom door swung open to a hush of polished oak and leather chairs. the air conditioned to a sterile cool that prickled Rebar's skin. Hale sat at the far end, tie loosened, his gaze locking on Iris with a flicker of calculation before sliding away. The chairwoman, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, nodded them to seats at the table's edge. "Mr. Costa, Ms. Moreno, your evidence prompted this. Proceed." Rebar stood first, the folder of printouts thumping softly as he laid it out, pages rustling like dry leaves. Elena Vasquez died exposing this. Emails show Hale redirecting funds, slashing therapies for patients like Iris, funneling to private accounts. She confronted him, vanished, and was found with signs of unrest. This isn't admin, it's betrayal of care. His voice filled the room, gravelly but measured, each word a link in the chain of truth. Iris rose next, small but unbowed, her twisted hand visible as she gripped the table's edge. "My sessions stopped last year. Elena said it was because of efficiency, but it was profit. She promised to fight for kids like me, so we wouldn't hide. Now she's gone because she did." The words landed like rain on parched earth, the board shifting uncomfortably, murmurs rippling. Hale's face tightened, but he said nothing, his silence a confession etched in tension. Harlan interjected, projecting the drive's spreadsheets on a wall screen, numbers glaring red, names tied to shell companies. "Irrefutable. Audit confirms discrepancies. Dr. Hale, your response?" Hale cleared his throat, voice smooth but strained. "Misinterpretations. Elena was unstable, resigned under duress. These are projections, not actions." But his eyes darted, the lie hanging thin as fog. The chairwoman's gavel tapped once, sharp as a spark. "Suspension pending full investigation. Security will escort you out, Doctor. This board acts for integrity." Guards appeared at the door, Hale rising with a glare that promised shadows. But the room's weight pressed him back. As they exited, the corridor felt lighter, the buzz of lights now a hum of progress. But outside, the black van idled at the lot's perimeter, engine purring low. Rebar's hand went to Iris's shoulder, guiding her to the Harley as Jax's truck revved. "Not over yet," he murmured, the pendant warm against his skin. They peeled out, the van lurching after. But this time, a patrol car, tipped by Harlan, swooped in, lights flashing blue and red against the sun. The chase fractured into daylight justice. The van cornered blocks away, its driver spilling under questioning eyes. Back at the warehouse by dusk, news rippled. Hale detained, the board vowing reforms, therapies restored, dignity reclaimed. Iris stood with Rebar under the floodlights, the sky bruising purple. "We kept her promise." He nodded, the wind carrying the first stars, a family forged in steel and silence riding toward healing horizons. But whispers lingered. Loose ends in Hale's web, a final shadow to chase before full redemption dawned. The floodlights cast elongated shadows across the warehouse lot, turning puddles into mirrors that captured the deepening indigo of the sky. Rebar's boots crunched on gravel as he paced slowly, the cool evening air laced with the metallic tang of lingering rain and the faint, oily residue from Tank's earlier repairs. Iris trailed a step behind, her cap tugged low against the breeze that whispered through the chain-link fence like secrets half-spoken. The day's triumphs hummed in the background, news alerts buzzing on Mira's phone about Hale's detention, the board's swift reforms echoing through local channels. But the quiet gnawed at Rebar, a reminder that justice's road rarely ended clean. Jax emerged from the side door, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. The thermos empty now, but his eyes sharp with the weight of unfinished business. Patrols holding the van's driver downtown, spilled enough to point fingers. Hale's got a silent partner, some suit from the suppliers. Name's Victor Lang, runs a front for the off-books cash. Harlan says the audit's digging deeper, but we can't wait on paper trails. If Lang bolts, Elena's truth dies with him. Rebar stopped, his broad frame silhouetting against the lights, the chain pendant glinting like a beacon in the dusk. He thought of the locket in his pocket, Eleanor's photo, a faded anchor pulling him from the isolation he'd armored himself in since Lila's grave. 5 years of solo rides, engines roaring against silence, and now this girl at his side, her twisted hand a symbol not of fracture, but of resilience that mirrored his own scars. Where's he holed up? We end this tonight, quiet, for her promise. Iris's voice cut through, small but edged with steel. No more hiding. Elena said Lang was the one pushing the cuts, said he'd visit the hospital at night, like a shadow checking ledgers. She clutched the oversized jacket's sleeve, the leather creaking softly, her eyes reflecting the floodlight's glow with a determination that belied her years. Mira joined them, laptop tucked under her arm, her tattoos shifting like serpents in the low light. Got a ping, motel on the old bypass, room 14, tanks gassing the truck. We roll light, rebar and jacks on bikes, me and Iris in back. Tank shadows, no guns, no thunder, just the weight of what we've got. The plans settled like dust after a skid, simple and unyielding, the vows' ethos pulsing through, loyalty as the true weapon, truth the engine that carried them forward. They mounted up under the stars' emerging prick, the Harley's throaty rumble blending with Jax's as engines ignited, vibrations thrumming through Rebar's gloves like a shared heartbeat. Iris settled in the truck's cab beside Mira, her face pressed to the window as they pulled onto the bypass, a forgotten stretch of asphalt flanked by whispering fields and skeletal billboards advertising dreams long faded. The air rushed cool and crisp, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine from roadside ditches, a fragile sweetness against the tension coiling in Rebar's gut. The motel squatted at the road's end, a string of neon flickering erratically over peeling paint and rusted railings, the parking lot dotted with semis and lone travelers' rigs. Room 14's curtains glowed faintly orange, a silhouette pacing behind the thin fabric. Rebar killed his engine first, the sudden quiet amplifying the distant hum of crickets and the soft click of doors opening from the truck. Jax flanked him, boots silent on the cracked pavement, while Mira hung back with Iris, a phone ready to summon Harlan if words failed. Rebar approached the door, knuckles rapping firm. 3 times, deliberate as a vow renewed. Footsteps shuffled inside, hesitant before the knob turned. Victor Lang cracked the door mid-50s, slick suit rumpled, his face paling under the motel's harsh bulb as recognition dawned. Costa, the biker from the hospital files, this is private property. Private like the ledgers Elena uncovered. Rebar's voice was low, gravel over steel, stepping into the threshold without invitation. The room smelled of stale smoke and cheap aftershave, a laptop open on the bed spilling spreadsheets that mirrored the drive's damning data. Jax slipped in behind, closing the door with a soft thud that echoed like finality. Lang backed toward the window, hands raised, eyes darting like a cornered animal. I don't know what that nurse told you. She didn't tell. Iris's voice pierced from the doorway, where Mira held it open, her small figure framed in the neon glow. She showed. The cuts to my care, the funds to your pockets. Elena died for it. You don't get to run. Lang's gaze flicked to her twisted hand, a flicker of the same disdain Eleanor had fought, but it crumbled under the room's collective stare, the vow's unblinking loyalty, a force heavier than any threat. Rebar pulled the printed folder from his vest, pages rustling as he laid them on the rickety table. Hail's singing already, your name's all over it. Walk with us to Harlan, confess clean, or the board buries you deeper than her grave. The man sagged onto the bed, the fight draining like oil from a punctured line, his whisper breaking the hush. It started small, efficiencies, they said, but the donors. They pushed. Elena found out, threatened exposure. I didn't. I swear, The van was Hale's panic, not mine. Tears tracked his cheeks, not of remorse alone, but the unraveling of a life built on rusting foundations. Rebar watched, the ache in his chest easing, not with vengeance, but the quiet poetry of truth uncoiling. Jax cuffed Lang's wrists with zip ties from his pocket, gentle but firm. Dialing Harlan as Mira guided Iris inside. The girl stood tall, her hand visible and unhidden, a silent testament. "For Elena," she said simply, and Lang nodded, broken but bound by the moment's honor. By dawn, the motel lot emptied under a sky streaked pink and gold, the convoy rolling back with Lang in the truck's bed, secured and silent. Harlan met them at the warehouse, papers signed in the floodlit glow, the full web exposed, reforms locked, therapies restored, a fund named for Elena to shield the vulnerable. Hale faced charges, Lang's confession sealing the chain. Rebar knelt before Iris as the sun crested, the warmth touching her face like a benediction. "You kept her promise, kid. Stronger than any road I've ridden." She hugged him then, fierce and brief, the twisted hand pressing against his back, a bridge from graves to horizons. The vow gathered under the rising light, engines idling like faithful breaths, a family chosen in the forge of quiet courage. Rebar swung onto the Harley, Iris waving from Mira's side, the road ahead clear, not of all shadows, but of the ones that mattered. Redemption wasn't a destination, it was the ride. Promises etched in wind and will, carrying them toward dignity's endless dawn. Thank you for riding this journey with us. These tales of honor and heart only thrive with voices like yours. If the pull of unspoken vows resonates, hit subscribe and join the crew. Let's keep the chain strong, one story at a time.